What's going on YouTube? Kigerr here, and in yesterday's video we did our PvP tier list breakdown. Today we're looking at PvE. Let's jump into it. Alright guys, so right above my head is my PvE tier list for the month of October 2022. I'm going to start off at the very bottom and work my way up. The three game modes I'm going to rank them in are Guild Boss, Path of Fire Sword, and Elemental Realm. So first we have Wind Chaser right here. Wind Chaser got some very interesting changes, with point number 3 about the after dodge or roundhouse kick getting some bonus damage. I could see them becoming B in the future, but right now I still have them at C because you would much rather, if you're going to be in the archer category, you would much rather have marksman, as you'll see as we go. If there wasn't another option and the primary class change still isn't available, then Wind Chaser, sure, go for it, but we know primary changes coming in the future fairly soon. And Marksman just blows Wind Chaser out of the water when it comes to PvE game modes. Next, we will talk about Gladiator. So Gladiator falls into a very interesting rut where it has really good AoE and some decent survivability, but the biggest issue they run into is Moonslash loses 10% of their current HP, and Punitive Chop loses 15%. So that's 25% of HP when you go and slash. It's a little bit less because it's current HP, not max HP. But the issue here is point number 3 on Gladiator. After releasing the skill that causes loss of HP, regenerate HP equal to 4% of the character's current loss HP per second for 6 seconds. It used to be based off of damage dealt, and it would just do its thing. Now, because it's worded in such a way, if you do Moonslash into Punitive Chop, you're losing a trigger of this, because if you go Moonslash, you will then start the number 3 healing right here, and then if you then 2 seconds later hit Punitive Chop, then you lose out on 4 seconds of the first version of the heal. You have to wait the full 6 seconds of heal and then use the next ability, which at that point you should have already swapped to your next to your other class if you want to get that rotation going. So this really hurts them in these 3 game modes that really focus on swapping between sets fairly often. Next, we'll get into Priest, Holy Sacrifice, and they're a decent secondary, but if you're trying to do DPS like you are in these 3 major game modes, it really doesn't do the whole thing. I do want to give it a honorable mention because in Guild Boss, if you have some people that are going to be AFK or cooking, time with the kids, what have you, you can have them set it on auto with Priest active, and they will buff everybody. So I mean, if people can't make it to Guild Boss or whatnot, you can just be like, hey man, show up, throw the Priest on, and you'll do something. Then we go into Mechanician. So Mechanician, there's argument that it could be an A tier. I currently have it in B tier. One, because that the bottom part of the effect over there still confuses the ever-loving out of me. And the wording, I still can't get a proper wording. I've had some answers from other players saying when you summon them, you get some extra attack. But I did it myself, and I didn't see any reflective of anything, unless being in Mechanician gives you a bonus. But I've tried swapping to armor and back, and I don't see anything as far as that actual passive. Now let's ignore that. They aren't a good DPS class, and let me explain. They're a good set it and forget it kind of thing. So if we have like the top 3 that you'll see in the S tier, armor, which you obviously can't have armor and mechanician, marksman and judge, are all 3 classes that they're built in such a way that they want you to be in that class as often as possible. So this is a mechanician is a really good secondary to these classes because you only swap back to them every 30-ish seconds to put down a couple of your summons, put down your mechanician creation, put down your blasting fire, and put down blood restraint, and then you swap back. And all 3 of those skills keep chucking, and they will do good amount of damage, but they have super long cooldowns that make them hard to manage. That's why they pair fairly nicely with the S tier things above, but they themselves, the craftsman mechanician, doesn't really pull the majority of the damage. Then we have A tier Berserker. Now, what's interesting about Berserker is it doesn't work in Guild Boss. Now, yes, the number 2 does work. So what happens here is you, if you're in Berserker, then you lose 50% defense and gain attack. This is very, very good in Guild Boss because you just have constant damage. But if you swap classes, then you lose Berserk, which in this game mode, to get your DPS as high as possible, you want to be swapping, if not to one of the S tiers above that really do the damage. So that doesn't really work. But number 3 right here, where if you hit someone under 50%, you deal bonus damage. This is really good and can really make the difference. And something like Path of Fire Sword boss stages, because once you get them to half, especially with the Slaughter keystone, then you can really you can punch above your weight really high in a game mode like that. The Berserker number 3 also does work in Guild Boss after it's under half HP, but once it's at that point, so how Guild Boss works is you do as much damage as you humanly possibly can do, and then you take out HP bars during that time, and that is an unlimited amount of damage pool that you can do. Once you get it down, once that time frame's over and you start hitting its actual HP, that is a consistent amount of damage. That is, no matter how much damage you do, everyone does the same amount of damage to that health bar for your guild. So you really want something that can do extra stuff during the break bar phase. Then we get into the S tiers. They are not in order. I put all 3 of those S tiers about the same, and Judge is the first one on the list. So what's going on with Judge is all 3 of these game modes are very much, while Path of Fire Sword and Elemental Realm, there is some movement, they also, minus the boss stages on Path of Fire Sword, have a lot of mobs where all 4 of your abilities really put in the work. Because there's a lot of mobs, you can do AoE, 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 and you're effectively a turret. You plant your feet and you say, okay, F it, and then spam your buttons. That's not to say that there isn't some thought into it of placing your Frostworm, placing your Whirlwind, deciding which skill to use your Judge effect on every 4th skill effect. So there is some skill cap here. But on a bare minimum basis, it is a fairly straightforward class. All 3 of the S's are just that same way. They all 3 are a bare minimum class that you can do really well if you have no idea what the thing's doing and just let auto press the buttons. But there is skill cap in all 3 of these that if you are good at them, you can get your damage way higher than others. Then we jump into Marksman. So Marksman is fairly similar to Judge. And what happens here? So Judge wants you to stay in Judge as long as possible so you can do the every fourth skill effect. Marksman does the same thing because when you crit with one of the Marksman abilities or with basic attacks, you reduce the cooldown of multi-arrow. And multi-arrow does hit like a truck. It's also a fairly quick animation. And what's happening here is all four of your skills, so where is it? Vortex Arrow and Meteor Arrow both have slightly longer animations than you would like, but Multi-Arrow and Shattering Arrow have really, really quick animations. If you want to get rid of something like Vortex Arrow, you do have access to Roundhouse Kick from the Windchaser class, but that means you're not proccing your Marksman passive. And let's not forget that increased bonus effect and enhanced debuffs by 30%. So when you're on Guild Boss, you'll see that the status effects right here, continuous damage equal to 10% of attack per second for 5 seconds. You will see these pop up on the Guild Boss damage bar. This class is also fairly good at Path of Fire Sword and Elemental Realm, just for the pure AoE about it. Then last but not least, we have another big change from last month, Armor. So what's going on here is Armor struggles. And why I say that is, so there's some argument that it could be down in A tier, and that's because you need to actually have your crit chance decently high, your crit stat decently high, and some pierce rate to really see the power that is Armor. If you don't have those stats up, then you'll still do well, definitely high A tier. But if you want to do those S tier numbers like Marksman or Judge, you have to have good stats. But here's the push and pull. If you have the same crit and stuff in Marksman or Judge, you can still keep pace with Armor. So Armor requires those stats where the other two don't, but once you have those stats, all three are about the same playfield, which makes Armor a very weird thing here. And I want to point something out. Armor can have trouble in Path of Fire Sword or Elemental Realm because of the recent buffs to it. But if you get the class advancements from Sword that give you HP steal rate, life steal, 60% from the 2 tier 4s, then you do vastly enough damage while in Armor to not die during those game modes. What's also a big thing right here, Netherfire, is when you're in Overload, increase your crit damage by 50%. That's not crit damage of the skill. This is flat crit damage for you. So you can do some fairly interesting things like Armor, use all your abilities over and over again. Netherfire, get a boss in Path of Fire Sword or Guild Boss down to 50%, trigger this 50% plus 50% crit damage, then swap to something like Berserker to get the Berserk execute damage and slaughter on your Berserker and hit 50% crit damage harder than normally possible. Let me know in the comment section down below what you have as the top PvE subclass, and type the word the term PvE in the comment section down below to be entered into this giveaway. Till next time, guys.